It's great to have the opportunity. I know you're a friend of the show, and I was excited to get to talk to you because, I've lived for the last 3.5 decades in Washington, D.C., and, the prospect of a far left, progressive, self-avowed socialist, Zohran Mamdani, actually getting elected, which by all accounts seems to be on the path to becoming, certainly won the primary, is something that just, I can't imagine what it must be like for people that love and live in New York City. Thanks for joining the show. Let me just get your initial thoughts on the Mamdani situation.
Griff, it's good to see you. To put it bluntly, it's sheer lunacy. The problem that you have now is that the younger generation buys into the false hopes of socialism and democratic socialism. I like to call it democratic communism, quite frankly.
Mm-hmm.
The issue is these young voters are the ones going out and vote, right? They saddle with student debt. They come into the workforce. They can't find jobs. Quite frankly, it's a generational problem because the majority of them weren't really raised in the way that we were in terms of working hard and having goals and aspiring and do whatever you have to do to work to achieve those goals, right? These kids believe in a lot of handouts. Now, do we have problems in New York City? Do we have social issues? Do we have income inequality? Do we need to increase affordability? Absolutely. But this isn't the way to do it, right? This is a massive, massive disaster for New York City and will drive out the income base that you need to pay for all these things, right? Socialism's great, right? It's nice. I have free stuff for everybody. Free supermarket, free daycare,
Who doesn't
free
like
this,
free
right?
stuff? Yeah.
Yeah, it sounds great, Griff, right? But who's paying for it, right? The government derives income from where? Tax revenue. If you don't have the people here to tax, to create the revenue to pay for these things, then it's just nonsense. And that's the problem, right? It's a lot of false advertisement is a polite way of putting it. And it's not going to work. And I think that the younger generation has to realize that. And most importantly, the demographic that is really going to be impacted by this has to go out and vote. New Yorkers don't vote. I mean, how do you have the financial capital of the world? And yet 8 years of Bill de Blasio, the worst mayor in New York City history, and quite honestly, our first socialist that we had running this city.
Well, and, look, Mamdani, by all accounts, is far to the left of de Blasio, looks like a centrist Democrat at some of the things he's saying. But, Pierre, you hit on something that I'm really glad you brought up, which is the tax base, because, the very obvious stuff is obviously his anti-Semitic views, his anti-law enforcement views, his anti-ICE, pro-illegal criminal alien views. The list goes on and on. But when you talk about really the core of the threat he would be in New York City, I think you put your finger right on it. And I was fascinated when I watched Senator Elizabeth Warren on CNBC sparring with the host, trying to defend Mamdani's tax base. I know you've watched it, but for our listeners, I want them to hear it and then have you respond, because I think you really are zeroing in on what is really a key part of what's at stake. Listen here.
What Zohran is saying is, I want people to be able to afford to live in New York City. That's what keeps it a vibrant city. That's what makes people want to live
Nobody
here.
disagrees with that, Senator, but raising taxes in order to do it?
Oh,
why is that
goodness.
the answer?
Oh, dear. Are you worried that billionaires are going to go hungry?
No, I'm worried that they're going to leave and spend their money elsewhere.
They've threatened to do that over and over and over.
And they have. They've left.
So that's it. Kudos to the CNBC host there to push on her to say, wait a minute, you're literally going to run people out of the Big Apple.
They don't want to learn from their mistakes. Go back to 2020, and I say this every day. The exodus of people from New York City wasn't driven by the pandemic predominantly. It's driven by the terrible policies of the de Blasio administration. They defunded the police $1 billion, and what did we have? We had a 50% increase in crime in a matter of a year. New York City is one of the most expensive cities in the world. You're never going to make it, affordable for everybody under the sun. You can help make progress, increase affordability by incentivizing affordable housing. But I will tell you, we saw this. You have to learn from your mistakes. People did leave. People will leave again. The pandemic has shown us you don't have to be physically in the financial capital of the world for 365 days a year in order to run a business. You're able, take a look at Chicago, take a look at San Francisco, use them as case studies. These cities are crumbling. They're crumbling because of horrific public policy and leadership. New York City cannot afford to have this happen. It will take us a decade to make up for the repair that the de Blasio administration calls for us. A decade it'll take us to make up. If you add this lunatic to the equation, good God, how many decades it'll take? I don't even know if the repair will be, I don't even know if it'll be repairable.
And it's fascinating. I mean, I have said that, there's a scenario here that maybe what's happening a little bit when you hear Senator Warren out there doing this sort of bidding for Mamdani and trying to make it sound good. She's a progressive that has for years perfected the art of trying to appeal to the socialist side of things. Right. Bernie Sanders, AOC, there's a few out there. But when you see that with Sanders, you have to wonder, is this the progressive left, the Sanders, the Warren crowd saying, let's start with New York City and then it'll go elsewhere? You've got other cities. You've got Omar Fatah out in Minneapolis, cut from the same cloth as Mamdani. And then now Katie Wilson out in Seattle. Looks like she may be in the lead out there. She's progressive, saying some of the same things. It may not even be just New York City that's at risk.
No, and then when you look at the election, take the election as an example. Trump won all of the swing states, right? He won every single swing state. I say this all the time. In my humble opinion, 80% of society lies between center left and center right. That's where majority of us live. You have to get back there. You continue going further and further. Learn from the mistakes. Learn from the election, right? You push this progressive stuff. People don't want it. Vast majority does not want it. It's great marketing. You mentioned AOC and Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders. I don't know what the hell they've accomplished, but they sounds great. People are buying into it. It's phenomenal marketing. I don't think they've really done anything. And I think people have to wake up and realize that it's all smoke and mirrors. Get back to being the center left, center right. Get back to common sense. If I can use an example, Griff, when you talk about, people leaving New York City, Mamdani's housing plan is something that I love zeroing in on, because I just coined the phrase destruction by design. When you talk about freezing rents, yeah, it sounds great. I'm going to freeze rents, and he does not believe in the private ownership of property, right? Does not believe in it. Now, can the government go and seize your property unilaterally and arbitrarily? No, they can't. But what they can do is regulate the hell out of it to drive the values down and to align themselves in a position where they'd be the only one to want to acquire these properties and create socialized housing. So this started in 2019 when de Blasio changed our rent regulations. The drastic change in rent regs made a complete disincentivizer for landlords to improve properties because they were not able to increase rents to get an ROI in any investment they put in them. So we have a lot of dilapidated housing, and we have about 100,000 units of shadow inventory that's not even on the market. Now, this guy wants to come in and compound the problem and freeze rents. When de Blasio's rent regs drove down value of stabilized buildings by roughly 50%. New York City has over 1 million rent-stabilized units. That's a lot of affordable housing for a city, yeah. Right? We use more, but you only get more by incentivizing development. Now, this guy wants to come in, freeze these rents. You've already had a 50% reduction in value. You freeze rents and you bring this radical person as your mayor. The values now go from 50% probably to maybe 10 cents on the dollar. And then you know what? He is primed to swipe in, and he's posted videos of this. They refers to as the Vienna model, where you come in and you create private land trusts for the government to acquire these properties and create socialized housing. And he has a nice smile and a charming voice. People don't see through it. It is flat out communism. That's what this is. And that's why I'm so adamant of fighting against this. It's a taking of property through destruction by design. And people have to wake up and see that. It sounds crafty. It sounds nice. It is flat out communism. And that's his housing plan. So if that plan goes into effect and that's your leadership, you tell me one sane person that's going to invest $1 in New York City. You tell me one sane person.
Yeah, right. And you wonder too, Pierre, if the wealthy liberal elites that live in penthouses on the Upper East Side in buildings with a doorman who plan to vote for Mamdani know that Mamdani plans to move them out of their house.
They're not, you have to look past just party, in my opinion. You have to look past party and actually dive into what these people are saying. The problems are society became one that just votes based off of party, especially in New York City. That's always been the case. That's why I'm an advocate of Sliwa dropping out. He has no chance of winning.
Right.
Cuomo, ridiculous. He ran in the first place, being an impeached governor. Adams, I say it all the time. I don't think he's done a great job, but sadly, he's the least of the evils, right? It's pathetic that the most important city in the world, you're voting based on least of the evils, as opposed to somebody you believe in.
Is he though? I mean, I think you're exactly right. Look, with Adams, Cuomo, and Sliwa in the race, it's Mamdani. The political math isn't hard. And, the Sliwa voters that are Republicans are going to be the first to vote for anyone other than Mamdani. And so Sliwa has a real tough decision to make here. But I was reading David Marcus, a columnist for the New York Times, was saying that he believes Cuomo has really the best shot, that ultimately, as he wrote, which is pretty interesting, he said, there's nothing to the left of Mamdani. Really, the only thing that's there is old-fashioned food shortage communism. And a lot of critics say that Mamdani is actually there as well. So you can't go any farther. You're just against the progressive socialism, communism wall. And he believes that it is if Cuomo can track to the center, get a center lane and carve it out, he might be the best to try and make it happen. And now we're hearing these reports and rumblings that possibly President Trump is getting interested in the race, in stopping Mamdani and coordinating in some way with Cuomo. To be fair, Cuomo and Trump have both said, no, neither of us have talked to each other. We're not coordinating. And Cuomo is going to have a very immediate tall task, I would submit to you, in knocking off the Trump criticism pretty damn quickly if for some reason there's going to be, a support of Trump for that. And of course, Trump could get behind Adams and it could go a different way. Mamdani, by the way, has been talking about this, despite the fact that Cuomo and Trump have said they're not in cohorts. Mamdani has been saying that is happening, and he's choosing to make it a target. I want to play a quick soundbite for you. Cut 12. Listen to this, Pierre.
New Yorkers do not want a mayor who is working in tandem with the president to subvert the will of the people of this city. We are talking about a president who has not just had that conversation with Andrew Cuomo, but one who is being briefed regularly with polling of this race and who is asking Congress people as to what they think would be the best way to defeat our campaign. All of it comes back from the understanding that for Donald Trump, the victory that we would deliver for working class New Yorkers is one that threatens the very basis of so much of his politics. It is a politics of insincerity.
Hey, what do you think about that?
I don't see where Trump has really been against the working class of this country.
Right.
If anything, trying to create, bring in domestic production into our country to help create jobs, especially for the working class people, auto manufacturing jobs, all the revenue coming in from tariffs. It's propaganda that you repeat enough and you truly believe this nonsense. There's nothing here that Trump is doing that hurts the little person whatsoever. And they keep riding on the false promise of creating these policies that are just going to solve everything and create equality. It's never going to happen. I hope Trump steps up and he backs one of the candidates. And I do hope, this is a fight against communism, in my opinion. I do hope that the government intervenes to some extent to help stop this. This is a complete catastrophe.
And you're so right. The Republican Party under Donald Trump has turned into the party of the working class. And that's not Griff Jenkins or Pierre Debbas saying it. It's literally the November election results showed that across literally every class, every age group, black, brown, white, young, old, you name it, you saw working class Americans cross the aisle and move in the direction of Trump. It's fascinating, Pierre. It's great to get your insight. You understand this. You live here, you understand the stakes, and as we watch this unfold, it's really going to be an interesting thing to see. And whether or not anyone can stop Mamdani, as we sit here today, we'll go on record and say it's hard to see a way where it's stopped, but a lot can happen between now and then. Pierre Debbas, great insight as always. Thanks for taking time and being a friend of the Brian Kilmeade Show. Have a great weekend.
Thank you, you too. Great seeing you.